From Book to Humorment. On November 5, 1966, British artist Tom Phillips was rummaging through a warehouse full of bargain books. He found an old hardbound Victorian novel by W.H. Mallock. Now here we need to decide the correct punctuation or a way to connect these. The way it's written is not correct because this is one sentence and this is another sentence. And you can't join two independent sentences with a comma, so A is out. Option B looks good because I'm saying that this British artist was going through a warehouse full of bargain books when he found an old hardbound Victorian novel. So this makes sense. Now, if I say finding an old hardbound Victorian novel, then that's not an independent sentence, so the semicolon would be wrong. And similarly, when finding is not an independent sentence, so the full stop is wrong. So B is the best answer. The book which Phillips purchased for mere pennies was titled A Human Document, and he decided to make it the raw material for his next art project. Now, this is the verb for the book, so it has to be singular. And since we are speaking about an incident in the past, it should be the past tense, right? So the way it's written seems good. The book was titled, so I like this. Were is plural, so that's wrong. Have been is plural and present, so wrong. And similarly, this is wrong. So A. A mixed media book of erasure poetry. This project would later bloom into a decades-long obsession, and as he continued to amend the near-forgotten novel into a kaleidoscopic work of art. Okay, at this point, the writer wants to add the following sentence. Copies of a human document can still be obtained, though the price is more than a few cents now. Should the writer make this addition here? So I'm talking about this artist, right, Tom Phillips, who found this old hardbound copy of a Victorian novel, and then he turned the material into an art project. And then I talk about this project, right? So this kind of continues from the previous sentence. So the idea of the copies of this book can still be obtained is not relevant here because we are not speaking about how rare this book is, right? At this stage, we are speaking about the project that Phillips made and what happened to the project. So I don't want to add this because it detracts from the focus of the passage on Phillips' artistic use of the book. Yes, so this is a good answer. No, because it fails to explain why Phillips would choose to use this particular book. No, that's not the point. That's not what this sentence is doing. It's not talking about, the idea here is not to discuss why he used this book. The idea is to kind of discuss his project. So C. Okay, now he continued to amend the near forgotten novel into a kaleidoscopic work of art. So transform, right? That would be the best word in this case. To amend is to change, but I'm talking about taking something and making it into something which is completely new. So transform would be the best answer. Mutate would also not fit the context here because mutate would also mean change and would also perhaps fit more in a biological setting. So I don't like these two. And it's not about rehabilitating this forgotten work of art. It's got more to do with what Phillips did with it, right? So C is good. Phillips initially worked on the book for over 5 years. Instead, he would treat it. In this process, he would open the book to a random page, then erase, cross out, paint over, or otherwise manipulate the text so that the carefully selected remaining words would create a unique poetic message. Okay, so I need to set up the information in the rest of the sentence. And my sentence should set up a contrast for this. Instead, he would treat it. So the way it's written doesn't make sense, because if he worked on the book for 5 years, then that instead wouldn't fit. So it's not A. Noted that the book's text contained a diverse vocabulary, was unfamiliar with the human document before buying it, never planned to read Malik's book. So D looks like the best option, because if I say that he never planned to read Malik's book, instead he treated it, and that treatment involved just randomly coming to a page and manipulating the page so that whatever was left could be turned into a poetic message. So this makes sense in the context of what the passage is saying. The fact that it has a diverse vocabulary doesn't have anything to do with treating the book. And similarly, C doesn't fit here. Okay, then I'm saying in this process, Phillips would open the book. So then erase, cross out, paint over, otherwise manipulate. Right. So in this process, Phillips, now I think had opened doesn't make sense because that is past perfect. And opens doesn't make sense because this is present, right? And I'm talking about his process. So he would treat it, right? So I'm saying he would treat it. So I think in continuation of that would treat, I could say he would open, right? And also, yes, I would have to say would open because I'm saying erase, cross out, paint over. And I can use these only when I say would plus verb, right? Because if I use the past tense, then I would say erased, crossed out, and so on. So the way it's written is correct. In one of his earliest treatments, he folded the title page of Malik's novel, truncating a human document to a humament. This struck Phillips as a particularly evocative title. Humament was an earthy word, as he put it, with echoes of humanity and monument. However, the newly coined word reveals something of his method, how Phillips would hew his own meaning out of the larger text of the novel, carving away words like a sculptor carves away stone to reveal a new artwork beneath. So now I need to decide the connector, and here I'm describing his process, and I'm talking about how, for example, he truncated the title of the book to a humament. And then I'm saying that this newly coined word reveals something of his method, how he would hew his own meaning out of the larger text of the novel, right? So I don't think however makes sense because there's no contrast here. So A is out. I don't think for example makes sense because this part is not an example. It's kind of following from what I'm saying before. I don't think therefore also makes sense because this is not cause effect, right? It's not that I'm presenting a cause and then presenting an effect. So I think D is a good answer because it's kind of building on what I have said before, right? I'm saying that he did this and this kind of revealed what his method was, right? So I like D. Phillips's first treatments were done mostly with ink and watercolors, but soon he also incorporated other designs, from abstract shapes and collages to elaborate drawings to cover or accompany the text. Even after he had treated each of the novel's 367 pages and put a humament on display, first as a unique artwork in 1973 and later as a book published in 1980, his work wasn't done. So this part is additional information, right? And this is my main sentence. Even after he had treated each of the novel's 367 pages and put a humament on display, his work wasn't done, right? So this doesn't need to have another comma in it because this is like one additional piece of info. So, and later as a book, right? That sounds great. Nothing with a comma, no comma, and this dash is also not needed. In his 1973 treatment of page 50, for example, Phillips painted the page with 6 green Petri dish-like circles covering all but the playfully absurd lines. 10 hours, bands play, it's a political revolution. For the 1996 version, Phillips covered the page with a richly drawn self-portrait, leaving the egomaniacal message, "At last, welcome my own myself." Though diverse in artistic style, they reveal, now I'm talking about versions, right? I'm talking about this version and this version. So both versions would be good. They is kind of ambiguous. I don't know what they is referring to. So yeah, the versions reveal Phillips's sense of humor, his delight in fishing the odd joke out of a dry text. The writer wants to add the following sentence: he returned to a humorment again and again, scarring the text for new opportunities. Yeah, so this would be a good place, right? At 3, because I'm saying that he, even after he had treated each of the novel's pages, his work wasn't done. And what do I mean by that? He kept returning to it. And then I'm talking about these versions, 1973, 1996. So then after sentence 2. In 2016, Phillips reflected on his lifelong engagement with the human document. He wrote the introduction to the 6th and final edition. In the introduction, he observed that he had yet to find a situation, sentiment, or thought that Malick's words cannot be adapted to cover. Okay, which choice most effectively combines the sentences? In the 6th and final edition's introduction, for the final edition, the 6th edition was the final. Yeah, so D is the best answer, right? Because it's concise. It's concise and it conveys the meaning. Writing in the 6th and final edition's introduction, he observed that, right? Here I'm repeating the fact of an introduction. Here I'm not making this concise, the fact that the 6th was the final edition. Yeah, so D. Okay, let's grade this. Writing. Yeah. BACCD. BACCD. And number 6. ADBCBD. ADBCB and D.